Welcome, everybody. For those who do not know, I am Dr. Megan Clark. I am an associate professor in the theology department and the faculty co-chair of our St. Johns CRS Global Campus Committee with my co-chair Dana Livingston in campus ministry. I am really excited about today because I have had the pleasure of working with our speaker on a project that I could not have completed without her help and her interviewing skills, talking with people seeking asylum. So we are looking today at the question of justice for migrants and the situation that is going on at the southern border of the U.S., but not just the southern border. It is in the news in New York constantly now in ways that don't get a whole lot of attention, and the whole process and all the different ways that people work within the system doesn't usually get a whole lot of attention. I would like us to begin, as we always do, with gathering ourselves in prayer. And this prayer I found is from a Father Hartnett, a Jesuit out at Xavier. It's entitled, "Give Us Hearts." God of love and compassion, may we always recognize your spirit. In the refugee family seeking safety from violence. In the migrant worker bringing food to our tables. In the asylum seekers seeking justice for their families. In the unaccompanied child traveling in a dangerous world. Give us hearts that break open whenever our brothers and sisters turn to us. Give us hearts that no longer turn deaf to their voices in times of need. Give us eyes to recognize a moment of for grace instead of a threat. Give us voices that fail to remain silent, but which decide instead to advocate prophetically. Give us hands that reach out in welcome, but also in work for a world of justice until all homelands are safe and secure. Amen. We have with us today and we do these every semester, these from the field virtual webinars, where we have an expert who works in the field of social justice and get to highlight some of our wonderful St. John's students who themselves are committed to working for peace and justice in our world. I will introduce everyone now and then turn it over to Vanessa. Vanessa Sanchez is a lawyer from El Salvador who has spent more than a decade as head of consular mission of El Salvador in Mexico and in Texas in El Paso. She's a human rights defender and at the consul was an administrator of public funds. In 2022-23, she also worked as chief of staff at Hope Border Institute in El Paso, Texas, and that's where we got to work together on a project where we conducted some interviews in El Paso and Juarez with asylum seekers and other migrant workers and farm workers as part of the Vatican Dicastery for Integral Human Development, doing theology from the existential peripheries, the North American component of that project. Currently, she continues to work as an advocate for El Salvadoran migrants in El Paso. We have with us Alexandra, or Sandy Durst, who is a second-year law student at St. John's, who is active in our migrant justice programs. She's also a undergraduate is from the University of Miami in music. Saul Bonifacio is a Vincentian seminarian and philosophy major here at St. John's. From El Salvador, Saul has lived in the United States for about 8 years, working as a barber on Long Island before coming to St. John's. And Holly Warner is a St. John's College Global Development and Sustainability major who's actively involved in our St. Johns CRS Ambassadors for Global Justice, the Earth Club, and a humanitarian organization called CARE. So our process will be that I will turn it over to Vanessa, who will tell us about her work, the work for migrant justice in the asylum process, what it is like and what it means to be in a different role than we usually see as someone who is the consul and the advocate from the asylee's home country, and the work she is doing now and how she got on this career path. And then we will have responses and a bit of a dialogue with our St. John students. Vanessa.
Thank you, Megan. Hi to everyone. I am excited. This morning, Megan asked me, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm excited." Well, it's been for me an honor to be here with you and share my experience. It's a small experience, but when I was starting to write what I did, I was like with some sentimental feelings to remember what I did, but that means that I'm doing the right thing. Well, let me introduce myself. I was born in the capital city of San Salvador. I was educated in a Jesuit Catholic school. Its name is Colegio Externado de San Jose. After graduating with a bachelor's degree, I began my last studies at the University of El Salvador, from which I graduated with a bachelor's degree in legal science. I don't know how it works here, but in El Salvador, you just graduate like a bachelor degree, and then you have to make practice to be a lawyer. So you don't graduate like a lawyer, just like a bachelor. So I start my practice, and then after that, the legal practice, then they authorize you as a lawyer of the Republic. A few years later, with a lot of study and a super rigorous exam, I became a notary of the Republic of El Salvador, authorized by the Supreme Court of Justice. Being a notary in El Salvador, it's totally different to the notary here. It's like a specialty. You can do some legal documents that you can sign wherever you want. In all the world, you can do it if you are in front of a notary of El Salvador. But these documents are going to be used in El Salvador. So even that you are outside and you cannot return to our country, you can do this in front of a notary. So then in 2013, I started working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of El Salvador, especially in the representation of my country in Guatemala, where international cooperation treaties between both countries were worked on. My work in that time was just to work with the ambassador and making arrangement with both countries. So I wasn't able to be with the migrant because it's different, because you said, oh, it's Guatemala. Yes, but we, the Salvadorians, we are legal in Guatemala and in Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Honduras. We are legal there. So you cannot see too much. You know that they are migrants passing the Guatemala to go to Mexico, but it's a different scenario. So then in 2016, I was transferred as a consul in the representation at Acayucan, Veracruz, where the second largest immigration station in Mexico was located at that time. I remember that at that time, there was a humanitarian crisis of excessive flow of minors, family groups, and unaccompanied adults. Migration from the countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras was excessive. We serve approximately 150 to 200 people daily just from El Salvador. Every day was an insistent fight to defend the human rights of these migrants, because at that time, as an example, they were given food with worms. The place where they slept was not the most ideal, despite being divided by gender, age, and families. I was a defender of girls and boys sexually abused on the journey from El Salvador to Mexico. We received many complaints of robberies from some Mexican people, robberies and extortion by immigration authorities, requesting economic and sexual benefits. We also defend cases against the community LGBTQ. We carry out family reunifications. We fought for many humanitarian visas, and at that time, we recommend the refugee that was operating by requesting it from the COMAR, that is the Mexican Refugee Aid Commission. But from that moment on, as a representative of my country, we couldn't not consult about the process of our Salvadorians because it was opposite to what they denounced. So it was this in this time in this form. When the Salvadorians want the refugee, they can't speak with the council. They can't have any help from us because they were denouncing that the government doesn't give them the protection that they need. So it was hard, and it was contradiction. I don't know how to say, but because how they will have that document? The only way is asking us. So it was like you were talking with them without they see you, and it was really hard. But you can, I don't know, you can find a way to help. Maybe another person that was in the station tell you, oh, that person needs this, and this. Can you help them? And I did it, and I sent the things, and they give it because you cannot talk with them. So it was a little hard with for us to help them in that way. Well, those are just to mention a few, but there was so much work and mental burden to help them, that many people. We were had to be doctors, psychologists, pastors, among others, to give even a word of encouragement to all these people. Every day, two buses were dispatched with people returning to El Salvador. And many times, a week later, they were back detained because they returned immediately, arriving in El Salvador to embark on the path to the American dream. The most difficult place for a migrant is the passage through Mexico, not only because of human trafficking, but because of the constant abuse to which they are easily victims. We also treat migrants in hospitals who had been involved in accidents, had lost some part of their body when they fell from the La Besia train, homicides, kidnappings, among others. I have always believed that there's still a lot of progress to be made in the defending the human rights of migrants in this situation. They were critical years in my professional career, where I have to overcome many tests, but also in the place where I learned more about the value of the freedom and the life, where I understood that we have come to this world to help and serve, the perfect place to contemplate the love of neighbor in each of them. I remember that I fought tirelessly until I succeeded to change the work dynamics within the consulates and the immigration station, requesting the same treatment towards them. The opportunity to offer them the option of a refugee in that country. I fought tirelessly so that they would offer food in good condition. Even though that I arrived at lunchtime at the immigration station to eat what the migrants ate, to check and force the authority to make a definite change. I am convinced that I was used by God through my work to make a difference and care for each one of them. Personally, I took my oldest son to share his toys with the children who were detained, and to make him aware from a young age that we have come to serve this world, to give love in the storm. Then in October 2018, I was notified that I would be transferred to open the first consulate of El Salvador in the city of El Paso. Because despite being a border area, it did not have consular protection for human rights cases. I remember that I arrived and there was only the General Consulate of Mexico and the Honorary Consulate of Spain. There was nothing of Central America. And it was then that I began my management by placing a consulate office located near the Greyhound bus station, because I can go to the station, to the bus station, and see if the people that was waiting to take the bus has enough food or something like that. So I think, oh, this is going to be, I can help them in a short time because the office will be near them. And the office is near the International Bridge where the migrants slept on the street waiting to be attended to by U.S. immigration. Here the scenario was different. There was also a migration crisis outside the border, but there was also a humanitarian crisis again to the excessive flow of minors. I remember that a temporary shelter was operating in that time, Tornillo, Texas, where it was one of the first places I visited where the children were in canopies separate from their parents. Some others waiting for family reunification with someone within the United States. But the numbers were alarming. On my first visit only to that one shelter were more than 500 children, Salvadorian, just Salvadorian, without understanding the process. So I got to work and personally interview each of them with information about their relatives to be able to communicate with them and see how to help them with a document. Many of them were already prepared and sent the documentation immediately because their reunification were with their parents, but they still had to pass the security test to place them in a safe places. Then I visited the other six shelters for younger children or minors with babies, each one with a different story. I want to share this. It was impacting for me. I remember a boy with just 8 years old. And when I start to make the conversation with him, he says, oh, yes, I came by myself. And I was like, uh-huh, just by yourself? Yes. And how do you know how to come? And he was like, oh, I took the bus by myself. Okay, but how do you know that it was that bus? And he thought that I will believe him that it was by himself. So he said that he saw crocodiles, and he was like making me a story that I can't believe that a boy with 8 years old has that story, traveling in 3 different countries by himself. And the other one that impacts my heart, because it was really hard, was that they called me from the shelter and they said, oh, Vanessa, I need help. I have a Salvadorian boy with 2 years old that he just had the passport from El Salvador, but he doesn't know his name, and he doesn't have a phone number to call to the parents. So we need your help. And I was like, 2 years? I can't believe it. So with the password, we search in the system and start trying to find his parents. We did it. It was like 2 days to find them because the number that they have, they didn't answer. So we have to call the police in San Salvador to go to the house. And it was a really hard work just to have the phone number. And the mother says, yes, I am here waiting that you call me. And I was like, okay, it's your boy with just 2 years. So that things like this example impact your heart because you don't know how to do this. And you said how they can send a boy with 2 years but when you speak with their parents, you can understand that they cannot come with them sometimes. So they have to make this um, to travel by another person, but it's hard when you hear their stories too. So well, each one of them with a different story that made the desire to help them stronger. At that same time, I was setting up this administrative office, meeting the local and immigration authorities, and of course, caring for the adults detained in immigration who were waiting to be deported to our country. In less than a year, I had achieved the respect and collaboration of the immigration and local authorities who always support my request in favor of migrants. It was different from Mexico and from United States. They were more open to help me. So in a particular way, since everything was outside the law, but we reach agreements where they request information that they need to make the procedures shorter and more effective for adult migrants. In the shelters that we visited every 2 weeks, we accompany each minor in their process with the case manager to offer them the necessary documentation so that the reunifications could be done in record time. I visit each immigration station in the two sectors that correspond to me, El Paso and Big Bend, supporting their requests, but they share information with us the same day if a family member called wanting to know about their family member. In the 3.5 years of my administration here in El Paso as a head of mission, we achieved more than 200 rescues of migrants, not only Salvadorian, but also those of other nationalities who were looking for us, asking for help for their relatives who were lost in the desert without water or food. In short, a lot of humanitarian aid work, but different from that of Mexico. We accompany the relatives of migrants who had died in the desert until we managed to repatriate the human remains of their relatives so that they could have a holy burial. After that, today, after these 10 years of humanitarian service to my country, I have never been able to feel more proud of each life that we transfer. Many of them now living here in the United States with their families, and that even though that time has passed, they always continue remembering the help that they receive. But in reality, they don't realize that they changed my life and reaffirm my constant desire to fight and defend each one of them. That is the end when I resigned to be a consul, and then I started working with Hope. It was a different form to work. It was more administrative, but sometimes I could do something for them. But I was still needing to be with the migrants because I need the contact. I don't know why, but when you start working in this, when you talk with them, when you have time with them, you transform your heart, your life, and you know that you need to do more. So right now I am working with the Salvadorians that need documents from El Salvador, not as a consul, but I can do something as notary. So if someone call me and says, we need you in this and this, I can go, I can do. Or even right now, they are having a lot of asylum process. I can help them to show the process, how it works. So what do you have to do? Where do you have to call? And they feel secure to speak with somebody from his country, because we talk in the same way, we use our words. And I always, in the beginning, I start like making jokes about our country. Do you remember the pupusas? Oh, I want a pupusa. And that breaks something in them when they see you and when they know that you are from your country. So that's the first part, Megan. I don't know if I did it right. I hope so. So I am here for you.
Thank you very much. No, this is wonderful. And what in particular, I love that asking you to share the work you've done and what you've seen, but also for our students to see the way someone's career journey evolves and develops, and the way that you know, as you found different ways as a lawyer and coming more to that working hands-on working with migrants was what you wanted. As I turn to the students, why don't we start with Sandy, and then we'll go in order of the introduction. Sandy, Saul, and then Holly. But so we'll start with Sandy.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. So I've been working with a research professor at St. John's on immigration, and I did that over the summer. So I was doing research on it, and then I was on YouTube, and I guess I had search information, and I started seeing more and more news, and it was all bad. It was all like angry people. It was all like there's too many people coming. And I wondered like how they couldn't imagine what it would feel like to be in that situation, to needing to leave their inherently beloved home for fear and then be greeted by more people who hate them. Um, don't they deserve a chance at good life too? What does their nationality matter? Everybody has a talent and something magnificent to offer. So I want to be a part of changing the point of view of others and uniting Americans who want to help and can be with those who need it. We have so much extra stuff we don't need, and they do. So I asked around how to get a donation box set up at St. John's Law in the lobby by the elevator. It took some I don't knows to find someone who did know. I emailed the dean and she didn't get back to me right away. I tried again and I asked the Immigration Law Society to help. I probably only asked because I knew someone in the club. She was with me and the immigration professor on research. It's hard not to feel too shy to reach out, but it's important. We made a flyer together and followed up with the dean on the email. Then once we had approval, it was easy. I set up the box, we taped up the sign, and emptied it once or twice a week for 3 weeks. Only a few people donated, but the people who did donated so much stuff. Then I went through some of the stuff, and anything that was stained, I put in a separate pile because if it was still good, I still donated it, but I didn't wrap them. I wrapped all the other clothing to kind of make it seem new and just a little more nice. I also got some gift cards and stuff like that, just like $20 to Chipotle or Starbucks from donations I got from family members. And communication was really important. It was like something was driving me. Like after seeing that lack of empathy, it was like I had to do it. And if I let people make me feel like I was crazy for doing it or out of the ordinary, I wouldn't have done it because people did look at me like, oh, that's random. But it's not because we can all do it. And they need it. So the day of, I went to Roosevelt Hotel and communication was one thing that was difficult for me. I don't speak Spanish yet. I've been trying to learn. I took French in high school because I wanted to be different, but I want to learn. So so the person that was gonna come with me to help, she couldn't make it. She wasn't feeling well. and the other person didn't come. So I was by myself, except my dad did come with a video camera, which was cute. And it was raining, and I got like a storage cart and just like went back and forth, gave it to them. And there were people outside waiting, like just hanging out because they don't want to be inside. I'm sure the conditions in there aren't so great. So even in the rain, they were outside and ready to receive help. And we distributed it. It was really nice. They were so grateful, and they loved when it was wrapped. They really liked the wrap stuff. I actually had planned a whole event at I at first I wasn't going to distribute it at the Roosevelt Hotel. I was going to do like almost a welcome party at some public forum to gain better publicity for them, because I just feel like there's this terrible rhetoric in America towards immigrants, and I don't quite understand it because they have so much talents. They're more entrepreneurial than us. They create more jobs. Like anyway, so I wanted to do this welcome party. I got the special permit. They only would let me do it at Foley Square. It was the only thing available. They don't let these types of things happen in Central Park or in any really nice area that people would go if they're not, like, people would only go to this if they're protesting the Foley Square. But it is across from like a court building that's important and where people go for the immigration documentation. So it makes sense to a degree. But it is raining, so that got canceled out. But even that, people were like, well, there's so much liability. What if this happens? What if this happens? But I love the donations. I just also feel like there needs to be some more communication about creating more positivity around it, and that like people are not inherently threats. People, I think, are good, and have a lot to offer. So that was pretty much it, and I want to do it again because it was really simple. Like, now that I know the contact, and as long as they answer, I have the poster. It probably takes about 3 hours total, like all, like if I'm not doing an event, if I'm just doing the donations. So there's not much reason not to do it, and I'm so happy I did. And I know they need a lot more. So yeah, that was my experience.
The many migrants, the hotels that the city are using, a lot of them are not that far from St. John's campus. The ones in, right, the Manhattan gets a lot of the attention in terms of the news here, but one of the things, and a number of groups at St. John's work on this, or partner with people. If anyone, the undergraduates have taken a class with Professor John Gonzalez in the theology department. His day job is with Catholic Charities Brooklyn, Queens. And so while the kind of Port Authority bus station and Manhattan is what gets a lot of the attention, actually where a lot of migrants are being housed and served and ends up being in Brooklyn, more in Brooklyn, Queens than just what makes the news. Why don't we hear from each, and then I'll let Vanessa respond. And think as well, if those who are attending, you can put in the chat if you have a question. Saul.
Yeah, I want to give you thanks for the work you have done so far. I identify myself with all the things you were saying, you know. I traveled to the border in the same way, 2015. And the experience that you mentioned, like, made you feel like made you identify yourself and identify the many crises we have over there, right? In my case, like you mentioned before in the beginning, I'm a seminarian, and my project with the future is to to help these people over there, spiritually and psychological help as well. You know, our congregation has been Vincentian. We have a mission over there in the Paso also, trying to help the people. So, and here now in New York, we have our parish in St. John the Baptist in Brooklyn also, who are trying to do the same kind of job, trying to collect teams to help Black people who are already here in New York. And I think that's the connection we can do with what we are starting now and where our life is going to, right? We cannot separate our own mission, our Christian belief, where it's around us. It's not possible to close our eyes to that situation, right? And when we get involved with all the things, our life changes. My life changed when I faced also that situation. I helped some guys who also are coming at that time, like 2018, in the same way. They stayed like for 3 months there in El Paso, trying to collect all the things you were saying, the documents and all that kind of thing. And it was pretty interesting for me to know and feel that you can do something, right? And after that was when I decided to go through this process, the discernment process, to become like a priest, to have a different way, different possibility, different opportunity to help this kind of people who are a lot. There are a lot of people who need help. And that's a good way to do it when we are in this country with a little more opportunities, right? It's evident that we have more opportunities over here. So try to expand our resources the best we can. So thank you for what you are doing. You are like an inspiration for me to know and understand that that's what we must do. You know. Thank you for that.
That's too much for me, Saul, but I'm grateful to say that. And I was like, oh my God, that was your inspiration to be a priest. It's amazing. So that let me think that Jesus is there trying to say we have person with good heart to help these people. This Sunday was I don't know how to say in English. Maybe you can help me with the Evangelio.
The gospel.
How do you say?
The gospel. The gospel.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the gospel from the Sunday gospel. Yeah, the Sunday
Yes,
gospel.
it says you saw me that I need to eat and you gave me
Yeah.
and it was like really hard, and it let me think again. I need to continue doing this because this is the way that God needs us right now. We know that we have a lot of other problems, but I think, like I said, God says, okay, you are the group that I need for the migrants. So please continue doing this group more bigger so we can be with more people helping. I remember, I didn't mention, but I remember that some of the migrants, they just want a hug. They said, Consul, can you give me a hug? And I was like, oh, yes, of course. And when you gave them a hug, they were like, thanks God. And something breaks in that part for them because they were feeling disappointment, they have frustration and everything, but you can help them even with just a hug. So thank you you are from El Salvador? You are
Yeah.
the one?
Yeah.
Somos salvadoreños de corazón.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Ellie, there you go.
Okay. Wow. everyone who spoke. That was awesome. And I think everyone really hit the nail on the head. And thank you, Vanessa, for sharing your experience. Kind of reiterating what Sandy said, I think it's super important that we see these people as people, and what Vanessa said, being able to talk to these people, just, relating to these people and hearing their experiences. It's crazy because in so many different issues today, the Western media creates narratives for many issues and for many people, and you don't really get to see that this is a humanitarian issue and this is real people that we're talking about. But things get so politically divided and so, talking about politics, and then it's like, well, it's not a political issue, it's a real humanitarian issue, which I think is so important to really bring to light. And so I think your experience, Vanessa, is super cool because you have that government background, but you also have that grassroots background of working with Hope and seeing, how different types of organizations do things differently. And I think that's a really cool contradiction. I was wondering, did have a question for you. I was wondering, so because a lot of things get skewed with the media and, people might not see it as the issue that it is and see that these people are real people. And, detention centers, with your experience there, there aren't the best conditions at all, if they're very poor conditions. How do you think that we can reallocate aid to reach those detention centers and enhance those conditions? And do you think that's going to be something more from the government organizations, or do you think NGOs like Hope is really where that aid is going to come from? Just with your juxtaposition. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that the volunteering part is the most important thing for everything. And the young people it's important because they have energy and they want to do it. So I think the volunteer will help them in both. Well, in the government, you cannot do too much because they have their team, but in ONGs like Hope and other ones, they need volunteer persons that they can go to. Remember, for example, here in El Paso, we have the border, Ciudad Juarez and El Paso. So they need help to go and speak with them, what they need, what we can do for them. And I have to mention, I have to say something. Like you said, I was in both part of, and the media says that like border patrol is the bad persons and they are bad. They are not. Somebody asked me who were helping me more, and it was border patrol. I have to say it because it's the reality. Maybe they are bad people. I believe it, but they were helping them too. And the people was like, thank you for helping me. I was in the desert and you were there. Even though you know that they will get to ICE and the ICE will return to the country. But they help a lot. I'm talking about border patrol, not the USCIS officers. That it's a difference. So they help, and the places that where they are, for example, the adults, the adult detained, they have a good place to be. It's different in Mexico. In Mexico, it's so hard. They don't have water, they don't have enough food and things like that. Here it's different. But another thing that we can help, I think, is to have more young people speaking Spanish. Why? Because our people is from Latin America. They need to understand what they are signing, what how to ask for asylum, but they don't. And the Border Patrol agents, even that they know Spanish, they don't speak them in Spanish. So they said, just firma, firma. And they say, okay, they just sign, but they don't explain what they are doing. So I think we can do this too. Maybe some of the students from your university, they can come to the border and speak with the people and show the process. You have to do this. You have to show it, what do you have, why is the reason that you are coming for, what happens in your country, so they can explain you, and you can give them the correct way to do it. So that's the other form to help. So please, you and Sandy, I think is the other name that doesn't speak Spanish, please try to learn Spanish so you can help us here, because we need them, that they know what they are doing, what they're asking for. I think that is another way to help here.
That was one of the most striking things when, and this wasn't when I was with you, Vanessa, this was on an earlier trip down to El Paso, and was at the one of the parish respite centers, and it wouldn't have necessarily helped in this particular case had I spoken Spanish, precisely because I don't know enough, right? And this is my plug to Sandy and the St. John's law students, right? If you have to be very careful what in terms of the documents. But what was striking to me is almost everyone I met had a packet of documents that they could not read and they did not understand.
Correct.
And what was, in most cases, it was, right, they had to show up for a hearing that was, at this time, it was in places where they had family they were going to, right? Like they were not aimless kind of entering, right? They were going to their aunt, their uncle, their brother-in-law, and these were mostly women with children, mothers and their children, but they didn't know where when they have to appear places, right? And this is how, right, legally people got in trouble, because the process, they then lose their access to the process because they don't know where they're supposed to be and when, and how to get the legal documents that they need. And it was, the kind of the need for people who are conversant in migration law, any students who are thinking about their future career paths. It's not the aspect of law that most people going to law school are going into, but it is one that is so desperately needed. And we have a very active immigration law club and center, and many St. John's students and law students, Spanish language students and law students in the period you're talking about, the 2016 unaccompanied migrant flux, were part of helping prepare the paperwork and help with the interviews. You got better access to some support in New York than unfortunately was given to a lot of the unaccompanied minors in the court system in Texas. But it is an area where there is much that people could do. We have someone who put in the chat asking if you know of do you know of anywhere that students could find a kind of crash course in phrases and things in Spanish if somebody is volunteering with migrants?
No, I really don't know. But
it's a good question.
maybe
There must
if
be
you
one.
want, for example, the other one says that if we have like questions or things, I can try to make something to like how we can interview, what what is necessary to speak. I can try, Megan, and I can write something, and maybe
Oh,
you
yeah.
can share with them.
We could easily share with the various student clubs and campus ministry, which has one of the student service trips each year is down to the border. It has sometimes been in El Paso and sometimes been in other border cities, towns.
So we can try to
Wonderful.
do something, and we can share it. And I have like something that it helps me a lot. For example, I don't know why, and that works a lot with me. I never, when I interview somebody, even that they are adults and they are bigger than me, I always are in the same size. I don't know how to explain. Or if it is a children's, I always sit so they don't feel that you are bigger than them, because the thing is they need you, like you being in the same vibration. I don't know how to explain it, but when you are sit near them, it's different when you are how do you say, when you stand up and they are sitting. I don't know, but that works a lot of too. So maybe the students can try that way too.
Yeah.
So they will connect them more.
And this year's plunge is to El Paso.
Oh, so
One
invite me
of
to.
yes, I expect I'll be asked to connect you with them as well. One question that came in. So does US immigration not have, right? Many are under the impression that they should have documents in Spanish, to get, do they just not, or are they just not given, or?
I don't think they are giving. They should do it, but they are not giving. So, but even the papers are in Spanish. Remember, most of these people doesn't understand what are they reading, because they are words about asylum and things like that. What's this one? So it has to be somebody that speaks with them, and with our cultural words, it says, oh, you have to do this first and you have to do this. But if you give them just the paper, they won't understand. Maybe some of them, they will do it, but the 80% they won't. I tell you, because I am having a lot of everybody asking me, what do I have to do? Please, can you help me? Oh, yes, you have to do this. Oh, I'm going to move to Los Angeles. What do I have to do if the papers are in El Paso? Okay, you have to go, you have to call, and you say that you are right now in Los Angeles and your process will be in Los Angeles, for example. But if you don't say them nothing, they don't know. So they forgot and they don't call, and they will be illegal always. So that's the part that I was saying. We need to talk with them and explain what they are going to do with the asylum process.
It was one of the we have a lot of coverage of buses from down in the border and up, and it one of the biggest things is, you know, where people and the process to make sure that you get, or you have a hearing and you can show up for it in the particular place that you've been sent. A question from someone who works in admissions wants to know if you've had any experience or have any words of wisdom for people who are working and trying to explain the college process for undocumented students.
Students, maybe hope helps a lot of that, but let me see. In UTEP too, the University of Texas in El Paso, they have a lot of work for migrants. And remember that here we speak both language, so you can ask them, and they will teach you, or they will tell you what to do and to give you information about the asylum too.
We've had and I know people, I have friends who teach high school in high schools around the country who've had oftentimes you have students, particularly this is the category of the dreamers, where young people may not even know that they are undocumented until it comes time to apply for college. And one of the challenges that Catholic universities have had, and again, it's different in different cities and different states in terms of how welcoming or not the processes are. But one of the things that is its own challenge is because there's not communication and because there's so much fear, it can be very hard, right? Many Catholic colleges have specific pots of money and have processes to support undocumented students, but you can't right? That hasn't been able to be publicized. And so, right, it's one of these things where, yeah, it's because you don't have communication because of the fear, it's particularly a challenge.
Another challenge, Megan, sorry for interrupt you, it's being a woman, for example. Remember, I always say the world is for men, not for women. I don't know why. We have advanced, but not too much. And we have the problems that the women are the ones that we always try to do something for the other people. But it's hard. I said because I have that problems here. To be a leader, being a woman, it's hard for the men here. They want to be just them. But the principal heart that makes this move, it's the woman. So some women doesn't want to because they have fear and they say no, it's gonna be hard. But right now that I see there are 2 students, women, and they want to do something, I'm like, yes, we can encourage. Saul, I'm very happy that you are doing something. But I think we move everything, but we have to let it go, the fear in these cases, because the people need us. They really need us. Sorry about that.
You saw when we were with the groups of migrants, you saw the difference. And I will say in particular, the resilience and the hope, in spite of unimaginable, suffering and difficulties they had experienced, the women with young children that went on that journey that we met with. We are just about out of time, and I know that everyone joins me in thanking Vanessa for speaking with us and sharing. I love these programs because I love our students, and then the students who will watch this after, getting to learn not just about important justice issues, but wider, right? The different aspects and career paths. I imagine, right? I never really would have thought of the fact that you have to be subversive as consul trying to help because because you are an agent of the government, and yet at the same time, right, these asylum seekers need they need documents, they need help, as well as the kind of the ways in which simply thinking about where you put a consul can add layers of help. And the fact that it's interesting, New York, where my father grew up in Brentwood, is one of those random places where there's an El Salvadoran consulate because there's such a large population, even though it's not that far from New York City. But as we close, I want to share, and I don't know if Vanessa will remember this, but I want to share an insight from, it actually wasn't from one of the migrant workers, it was from the farm worker organizer, Carlos, when we were at El Paso, who we interviewed. And he said that in doing this as a Catholic, he said, our faith is telling us we need to accompany migrants. And then he said that what migration represents today is an act of resistance of people who refuse to disappear, refuse to be what Pope Francis calls the disposable created by this system. And I keep coming back to that statement over and over again, because we can romanticize the kind of the resilience and the entrepreneurship and all of what we know in the United States immigrants bring to the table, but it is that deep act of resistance against a system and a world and all the little things along the way that say, somebody doesn't matter, the kind of the act of hope that is the act of resistance that is migration, that is making that step, is in a migrant story, is pretty audacious. And so I join the students in thanking you for your work, Vanessa, and I thank the students for their speaking up. I always love highlighting our student leaders because they are always wonderful. And I thank everyone who joined us and who will watch this online. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.
You too. Bye-bye.